Welcome back to the Champagne on Ice podcast presented by the Field of 68. And we are recording this about a half hour after Illinois drops another game to Rutgers. And they just keep topping themselves. The last 3 weeks, I think I've called a new loss the worst loss of the year. But I think this one is the strongest candidate you've had so far for worst loss of the season, as Illinois goes to an 11-11 Rutgers team, falls behind 23-6 early in the game. Rutgers closes the game on a 22-11 run after Illinois took a 2-point lead with 7 minutes to go. And Illinois is playing some really bad basketball right now, and this is a sight to watch, this team playing offensive basketball. 6 points in the first 10 minutes of this game. You look at the three-point line. Oh, look at that, 6 of 28 from three for this team, 13 turnovers. Where do we start on this one? Mike Farmer, by the way, I'm Kyle Tausk. Where do you want to start? Go ahead.
I have no idea, man. I was gonna come on here. It was like, you start terribly, you end terribly, and we can't even act like the middle was good. Illinois kind of took the lead, got back in the game, but they look terrible. And they've looked terrible for the better part of a month, although we've been kind of positive on here, trying to find fun things to talk about, like Dre's emergence. Mereza's been good. Will Riley was really good again in this game. But overall, just nothing's working. Half the team looks uninterested in what's going on. Half the team can't complete a pass. The entire team can't shoot a three. So it's just kind of been a complete disaster for a month, like I said. And tonight, and the Nebraska game, and the USC game, and the Northwestern game 2 months ago, it's all kind of just compiled into what's now a 15-8 team, I want to say, and 7-6 in conference. You've got the highlight wins over Oregon and Indiana and blowout over Penn State, and you beat Wisconsin, but at some point the losses do matter, and we've got to that point where we just have to call it what it is. And I just don't think this team has it in them right now, and I'm not really seeing the what Brad Underwood envisioned in the offseason panning out come March.
And you're just losing to teams that you should, on paper, be so much better than. And now you're making it a theme to do that. And it's not easy to win road games in conference play. I'm not saying that Illinois should be blowing these teams out. But the efforts you've put forth against Nebraska, who's on the bubble of the tournament right now, Rutgers, who is 12-11. And I understand that Dylan Harper came back and played in this game and pretty much cooked Illinois for 40 minutes. And that's a big part of Rutgers' team. But they've had Harper and Bailey together for a lot of this year, and they haven't been good. It's not like all of a sudden they're some spectacular tournament level team. This is a non-tournament team that you go and let take a 17-point lead on you in the first half. You've already lost to Northwestern this year. USC at home is a team that you should not be losing to by double digits on your home floor. And at this point, the injury, all this other stuff, the sickness, that stuff's not happening for this team right now. I get Tomislav Ivisic went down with an ankle injury in this game, but he came back in, and you were down 23-6 with him on the floor. So there's no more, we're not whole, we're not. This is Illinois. This is their full team, and it is not a good product on the floor right now. And really, I didn't think Illinois played all that well defensively in this game. You give up 16 offensive rebounds to a bad rebounding Rutgers team, and that's just, that's an effort thing. That's not showing up to play in a very important road game. You have an opportunity to build off of a big win at home against Ohio State where you figured some things out, made some lineup changes. You go into this game, and you go down 23-6 early in the game. Rutgers is out-toughing you. Rutgers is slicing you into the paint. Illinois has nothing working offensively. And it's just, I don't know what to make of this team right now. I will note, by the way, I actually misspoke. Trey White missed this game, so it wasn't the full Illinois team, but Trey White wasn't giving you much anyway. I don't think he would have changed the result of this one. The point being that, at some point, this team has had a lot of really talented players on the floor, and I'm not going to accept if this guy was healthy and if this guy wasn't sick. You're getting a pretty full version of this team right now, and it's a bad product. And offensively, it's a broken team. You're down to 313th in three-point shooting, despite being top 30 in three-point attempt rate. There is no creation in this offense from your guards. There is no playmaking. Kasparis Yakachonis is playing terrible basketball right now. I mean, there's just no answers for this team, and boy, some possessions early and late in that game were tough to watch, and there's got to be some serious things figured out here from really Brad Underwood and this coaching staff to get some structure involved, or maybe place even greater emphasis on Will Riley putting the ball in his hands. He's the only one that created anything for you with 6 assists in this game. I don't know. I don't have many answers right now, but this team is going through it.
For sure. I know I wrote an article about this before the season. I don't remember how much I talked about it on the actual podcast, but coming into the season, like you saw parallels between the roster construction of this team and the roster construction of the 2022-2023 team with the 4 freshmen, with TSJ, Matt Meyer, Dane Danger coming over. And then this year with, a handful of freshmen, handful of transfers, just a whole new roster in general. And that team's issue was every time they got down, every time things weren't going right, they just ended up shooting 45 threes a game. And we're at a point in the season where the numbers of like 3-point attempts compared to our field goal attempts and our 3-point percentage are nearly identical to that team. We know how that team ended. 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, just fell apart against Arkansas, sucked in the Big Ten tournament against Penn State, which is terrible to watch for the last 3 months of the season. And like we've reached that point. I think the only difference is Illinois this year had a top 5 pick, or a guy that looked like a top 5 pick for 2 months of the season. At this point, he doesn't even look close to that. You can blame it on the injury he suffered, blame it on whatever, but it's just the truth. He has not looked good. Like we talked about it a couple days ago, and we were still kind of trying to make excuses. Like, yeah, I think he'll get his confidence back. It could be the injury. It could be this, just a shooting slump. I don't know. I think I'm ready to call it what it is. Like he's been bad, and the whole team has been bad. Besides Will Riley and Dre and a couple other guys, maybe. But we're at the point where Illinois is kind of a replica of that team from 2 years ago that just was terrible for the last 3 months of the season. The defense was all right, but offensively, they were just giving you nothing night after night, losing to teams they shouldn't have lost to, not beating the upper tier teams in the Big Ten like they'd done the 2 seasons prior when they went on runs in March and February in the Big Ten. So yeah, it's just tough. Like if you've listened to Brad Underwood's post-game press conferences this year and past years in general too, he talks about uncharacteristic mistakes lost us this game. A guy doesn't block out here, bad turnovers here. At some point, when you've lost 5 of your last 8 and you've lost to USC, Nebraska, Maryland by 20, and Rutgers tonight, it was 11 and 11. Those uncharacteristic mistakes are not uncharacteristic anymore. And I think we've really started to see that. We could have called that weeks ago, but we've really seen that with just the turnovers, lack of execution, and just lack of rhythm or anything on offense. The defense is still fine, but like even tonight, Dylan Harper got what he wanted, as you said. Ace Bailey had a 6'1" Dre Gibbs Lawhorn on him and played pretty well. Random guys from Rutgers hitting threes, hitting big shots when they needed to, grabbing offensive rebounds when Illinois really needed to grab one. So it's just the uncharacteristic mistakes have become characteristic mistakes, I guess. Like at some point, it's just who this team is. When you've played 23 games this season, you're almost in mid-February, you're over halfway through the Big Ten slate. There's not many more chances to turn the season around and get confidence back, get a win streak going, because all of a sudden you're playing Duke, Purdue, Michigan State again, and then you're into Big Ten tournament play and hopefully to March Madness. I don't think that's really in doubt with the resume and the metrics, but still, you get what I'm saying. Things have to change, and I don't know if anybody really foresees that happening at this point because the results over the past month have just been horrific, to say the least.
There's just no trustworthiness in your guards making decisions right now. I think that's the most staggering thing for me is there is just some horrific decision making happening from your top 2 guards, and Kasparis has just not been himself at all for about 5-6 games now. Tonight, 7 points, 4 fouls, 3 turnovers, 2 assists, 2 of 8 from the floor. Just I mean, those 3 turnovers felt like 9 because all 3 of them were just terrible ones and ones that he should not be making. And there's just something I do think that there's probably still something lingering there for him, but it's also probably just a guy that is in his own head right now, not playing well, and has no confidence in his ability to make plays for this team. And that's an 18-year-old freshman for you, hitting maybe. You could start to more confidently call this a freshman wall for Kasparis Yakichonis. You see it a lot. You thought maybe with how good he was early in the year that he was going to be invincible and that wasn't going to get to him because he was so advanced in terms of his skill set. But it's happening to him now, and he's been a negative for Illinois when he's been on the floor. Kylan Boswell's decision-making is extremely untrustworthy for this team. He didn't turn it over tonight, but comes down and on a crucial possession takes a totally unwarranted three, which feels like something that you can count on once or twice from him every time. And I just thought some of his shot selection was poor in this game, did rebound it well, and I thought he was a guy who guarded extremely well in this game, had 4 steals, and I thought actually bothered Dylan Harper as much as anybody in Illinois did. But his decision-making is bad. Will Riley was the only guy he could trust with the ball in his hands, and man, that's scary. As much as he's playing really well right now, that's scary because you're supposed to have 2 really good ball handlers in your backcourt. You don't have that. And you're just not getting consistent play from anybody on this team right now, and it's really tough to build any type of momentum when you don't know what you're getting, when the effort and just the way you come out and play early in a game isn't even consistent. Like, that's the one thing that should be there all the time. If there's true offensive issues, if there's shot making issues, that's one thing. But when you're giving up 7 offensive rebounds to Rutgers in the first 8 minutes of this game, a team that was barely inside the top 200 in offensive rebounding before this season, while you're the 20th best defensive rebounding team or top 20, whatever it was, and Rutgers is just beating you up early, getting what they want in the paint, they're more physical than you. Like, this is an 11-11 basketball team that doesn't have a lot of talent outside of those top 2 guys. And yeah, Harper was a big reason they won tonight, but there were other guys down there in the paint that were just outworking Illinois. That's the type of stuff that really concerns you in terms of just, is there any way that this team can build any type of consistency or a winning streak or anything, or try to round into shape if you just can not trust anybody to show up? You can't trust this team to be the same team they are from one half to the next half. I mean, it's not even game to game, it's half to half. They were playing terribly in the first half against Ohio State. Then they have a great second half. You buy back in. First half of this Rutgers game is awful. You turn it around a little bit in the middle part of the game, and then you close poorly, and it's bad right now, and I think Brad Underwood and the staff really have some things to evaluate here. I just think you already made some lineup changes, but just in terms of, I don't know, add some sets to this offense to try and get easy looks for guys or something, or just really start to be a lot more aggressive with minutes. Like, there's not one guy on this team that I'm dying to have on the floor for 30 a night. It's a night-to-night thing right now, and there's just no consistency coming from anybody.
It really sucks because the guy a month ago that you wanted to play 40 minutes a game, and KJ, he's not playing in crunch time. He's not playing the final minutes, the final 8 minutes of the last 3 games. Like, it's unbelievable almost how some guys have lost confidence. It's just crazy because a week and a half ago, we come on here after Illinois beats Northwestern. Like, a program win, Illinois out-hustled Northwestern, just dominated them for the entire 40 minutes or 35 minutes till they went on that run towards the end of the game. And then, like, the next game, Nebraska, or whatever it was, Nebraska, Ohio State, the next 3 games, lack of effort in this half, they really good in this half, terrible the next 2 halves. It's just a game-to-game, half-to-half thing, like you said. You can't trust a single person on this team. You can't trust the coaching staff even at this point, really. But at the same time, like, I don't even know what adjustments they can make, because you've tried putting DGL in the lineup, you've tried keeping Merez out there with the 2 big lineup. One half it's going to work, the next 3 halves it's going to look miserable. And that's just kind of been the story of the past month. As you said, you can't have trust in any one guy. And yeah, I don't even know where you go from here. The one thing you do know is that the shooting is completely broken, and I don't think there's any chance of that being fixed in the next month and a half until the season ends. So I think, like, at least cut back on the threes, because we've seen 17 of our 23 games have probably been around a 6 of 28 3-point shooting night. We've seen enough of it. Let's try to get Merez some looks in the paint. Let's try to get DGL going downhill. It's worked at times over the past month, and then at times we just completely abandon it and resort to Kylan Boswell doing the step up and shoot the 28-foot three from the top of the key, and somebody gets an offensive rebound and Ben Hammerkow shoots a three that he bricks. Like, we've seen enough of it. And it's not the 3-point shooting isn't the sole issue on the offense, obviously. The turnovers and just the lack of playmaking really have been miserable too. But like, you got to start somewhere and try to make an adjustment. And I think you at least start with toning back the 3-point attempts, because we've seen 23 games of 30.8% 3-point shooting, and that's not going to cut it in the Big Ten level. It's not going to cut it in the Big Ten tournament or in the NCAA tournament. We've seen enough of it, so I think you at least got to start there offensively.
And the thing is, I think a lot, again, and it feels like every game, yes, were a lot of the 3-point looks that Illinois got in this game pretty decent looks that you probably could have reasonably expected a college basketball team to knock down. Probably. But there becomes a point where even pretty good looks from three are not looks that I necessarily care for, especially when there's certain guys like, which guys on this team, if you go down the list, do you feel very confident, even if they're open, taking an open catch and shoot three right now, you're confident that shot's going to go?
Nobody.
Is there anybody? I mean,
No.
you hope it's Benham Rickhouse. It's not. He's shooting 34% from three, 32 in conference play. Kasparis can't buy a shot right now. Dre's shooting 24% from three for his career. I mean, it's Big T just continues to struggle, 27% in conference play. These just aren't high percentage shots for this roster. And it is a lot. It's very similar to the 22-23 team, who was one of the worst 3-point shooting teams at the high major level, yet took quite a few of them. And there became a point in February and March where I don't care how open guys are, I don't want that shot because I've seen this for 2 months now. These shots aren't going to go down. And at some point, like Brad Underwood is a math guy. He's an analytics guy. He builds his defenses around analytics, playing the numbers game. The idea of this team was a good one in the offseason in terms of, okay, we think we have good shooters on this team, so we're going to try to take a lot of them. We've got a really good point guard and a bunch of shooters around him. We're going to take a lot of threes. Now it's February 5th as we record this. You're 313th in the country in three-point shooting at 30.7%, yet you take the 28th most of them in the country. In the first half against Rutgers, you took 17 threes, were 2 for 17, 8 for 16 from two. I think he had 8 free throws or whatever the case was. Like, you're losing the math game at that point. No analytic tells you that that's efficient offense. Shooting the 28th most threes at the 313th best percentage in the country. I don't care what kind of looks they are. Your primary offense cannot be generating an open three right now. I don't care if it's open. I don't care if it's a catch and shoot shot from Rickhouse right now. Like, yeah, I'm not discouraging guys if you have a good look to take shots. And I'm not saying how dare Ben Rickhouse take that open three he got. Nobody's saying that. But the crux of your offense needs to completely adjust at this point. That's the only thing that I think can make this team a legitimately good offensive team again, because we've seen it for far too long now with the shooting. There needs to be a massive emphasis to driving the basketball, attacking as much as possible, putting pressure on the rim, getting to the free throw line, putting your bigs in a lot more rolling action as opposed to Big T always popping and playing on the perimeter, using Merez's physicality, his lob catching ability. I mean, just find ways to get the ball into the paint, because that's where this team's at their best right now. Your guards have to be a lot better decision makers for Illinois offensively in general. But also a guy like KJ needs to be more aggressive seeking his own shot around the bucket. And it can't be the step back or a crazy around the back, throw it across court pass. He's got to look to score around the rim more, because we've seen him do it at a high level. That would help Illinois' offense. We've seen DGL do that well. Kylan can get to the free throw line. These are the types of things that need to be the focus. And I also think this Illinois coaching staff could use maybe just a little more structure to this offense, because you've got guys that I think could use just a little bit of structure to their lives right now on that end of the floor. You just use a little bit of direction, because there's a lot of directionless offense for Illinois. Early in this Rutgers game, there was no plan out there. And there was nothing happening, no advantages created, bad shots being taken. I mean, you just got to get better on that end of the floor, and there's got to be something that changes here, because it was really bad to watch for 70% of this game.
Yeah, I just think for as good as the players are on paper and as good as their roster construction was in June and July, some point you do have to remember that half of this roster is 18 and 19-year-olds. It's the youngest roster in Power Four basketball. And I think some of the in-game and half-to-half and game-to-game consistency can be attributed to the fact that like they are 18 and 19-year-olds. It's the youngest roster in Power Four basketball. And for as talented as it is, there's going to be some inconsistencies. Like, I do think you're right. Some structure, let's run some sets for the first 5 minutes of the game instead of just, the classic KJ and Tommy pick and roll, where KJ's not even trying to get in the paint at this point. It's a step back three or just a turnover. So yeah, some sets, just any sort of movement on offense, really. I think Kylan Boswell tries to get downhill when he's in the game, but like that usually ends up being a missed layup or a turnover too. So it's just everything's out of sorts right now. And when those guys don't have the ball in their hands, it's Will Riley who can't even dribble really. But he has been scoring. I'll give him that. He's been really good. But like as a playmaker for guys other than himself, that's not really going to cut it. Dre's not much of a playmaker besides getting downhill and a spin move and a nice layup. So yeah, there's just not much going on offensively right now. And then you throw in the fact that they're shooting 30.8%. And yeah, that's a big reason why the offense has looked miserable for the past month. So I don't know. Like, you can't change the ages of these guys right now. You've given them 20 games of experience, and 60% of it's been good, 40% of it's just been horrendous. And it's not really going to get much easier, because in your next 8 games, you have two bad teams, Iowa and Minnesota defensively, and then you're playing 6 top 30 teams in the country, including Duke with Cooper Flagg and Maluach and Tyrese Proctor. And then at the same time in the Big Ten, you've still got Wisconsin, Michigan, Purdue, and Michigan State and UCLA. Like, it's a gauntlet. And it's coming at a really bad time, because the one player on this team that's stepped up is Will Riley, and the rest of the team has pretty much fallen off the face of the earth. So it's going to be an interesting next month for sure. I don't know where we go from here. We've talked about some little things like running sets in the first 5 minutes, changing the offensive identity. I guess that's not a little thing, but whether or not Brad Underwood and the staff actually do that, we'll just have to wait and see. So I'm just not feeling great right now, and I think you have to eventually take these losses at face value and just call it what it is and say this team is not as good as we thought they were.
Yeah, this is one of those where, and I was starting to get there after Nebraska. I wanted to see over the next stretch. You had Ohio State at home and then Rutgers, Minnesota before you started the gauntlet stretch, like you said. I wanted to just see with Tommy coming back and what was going to happen, what to think. But yeah, this is one of those losses that really, I mean, I don't know how you can still be bought in on this team being a national contender of any kind right now. Is that high-end potential still maybe in there in some world? Possibly, but right now, this team isn't a very good basketball team as we sit here today, and they've been one before this season. There's still one in there, I believe that, but I think a lot of changes need to happen. And maybe you're right. Maybe all it is it's a young team, and one that probably should have expected was going to struggle and was going to be inconsistent night to night and was going to struggle with decision making and bringing it from an energy perspective. That's the thing that was most disappointing about this game, was just, boy, you come out and just get punked by a bad team, by a team that's not going to make the tournament. And that's the type of thing where I do think that's been a trend here since early January of, you don't know even just the effort level you're getting. It's not just this team can't make shots, it's broken offensively. It's teams are outplaying, outworking Illinois. Nebraska did that. USC did that. Maryland did that. Like, You can't show up 50% of nights and expect to just coast and be a 4 seed in the tournament. Like, that's not, you're not good enough just because you got NBA talent on your roster to do that. You are still young. You do still have a lot of things to figure out, and it's not a good place to be right now. I'm struggling to fully believe in this team as they're currently constructed unless I see a total 180 in terms of how this team runs offense, and you really start to get a lot of these guys playing a lot better. And I mean, you brought it up. Let's talk about it here before we close it out. Like, yeah, this stretch upcoming could get really difficult really fast if Illinois doesn't figure things out. I'll tell you one thing. At Minnesota on Saturday is the must-win of must-win games. You can't lose that. You just can't lose that game or the bubble starts to come into the picture, legitimately. Knowing that you have a ton of losable games, there's only one game that you would feel halfway confident of Illinois winning if you lose at Minnesota, and that's Iowa and Champaign the rest of the season. And yeah, this team's got 8 losses right now. Again, they were a 5 seed projected heading into this game. Are their NCAA tournament hopes in jeopardy right now? No. But at some point, the loss total matters when you look at a team, and this team can't afford to keep losing games. They've lost 5 of their last 8 games, have lost 8 total games, have lost 6 games in conference play, and it's going to be a tough February. So this team does need to continue to win basketball games. I don't necessarily think that the 3, 4, 5 seed range is probably where this team is going to end up anymore. I think you're looking more at maybe the range of where that 22, 23 team was in that 8 area, depending on what you can do here. I mean, you still got plenty of great win opportunities. You got 2 big home games with Michigan State and Purdue, but you're going to need to figure a lot of things out before you get there. The confidence level is just not that high of winning any night right now, and that's the biggest problem. You just don't feel like you know what you're getting any night you sit down and watch this team play.
Yeah, that's really all it is. And as much as I don't want to say this, if this team does make it to March, there could still be one of those 50% shooting nights, dude. And maybe you don't get it in the first round. Maybe you sneak out a win in the first round. It comes in the second round. You get a 45% 3-point shooting night over a 2 seed. And that's all it comes down to. The rest of the season could be terrible. And then you string together 3 good games in March, and the outlook on the season completely changes. I'm not going to predict that right now, but I don't know. It's college basketball. Things can happen. I will say, you mentioned Minnesota being the must-win, can't-lose game. I think that's the UCLA game with Kofi Coburn coming back and Sky Clark coming to Champaign. If Sky Clark gets to quit on the program and then 2 years later come back and beat Illinois' ass, I'm quitting on the season, man. Like, I'll see you guys next year, because that would be hell. I don't. And then the next game is Michigan State with TSJ coming back. Must win. Like, we can't lose to Tom Izzo on TSJ's return night. But yeah, it's just, that kind of sums up the next month. It's a lot of must-win games, I guess you want to say. And we'll see if Illinois comes out and competes and actually shows up and comes out with a win in some of them.
Yeah, the bright side of things is that there's still over a month left of the regular season. There's still time to make changes. There's still time for Kasparis to turn back into the guy that we know he can be. There's still time for some guys to make more shots. Nobody is ever going to call this team a good shooting team again, but I agree with you. There is a good shooting night in this team at some point. Maybe in the NCAA tournament. That's when I'd love to have it. And there's shot making in a lot of these guys. They're just not making shots. But I just think, this team's got to reevaluate themselves. There's got to be some tough conversations here coming up, and you do really need to value some of these home games and opportunities, because there's still absolutely a team in there that can beat anybody left on the schedule. But the confidence level of getting that version is very low right now, and at some point you got to snap out of this funk, because it's just a lot of heads hanging and a lot of really poor basketball being played for Illinois. But there's still time, and there's still a good team in there. There's still a good coaching staff on that sideline, and there's still a good roster on that court. But boy, it's been tough to watch here, and you do start to get some deja vu of that team 2 years ago, and that's something that you never ever wanted to say, because that team was a headache, and this team is starting to become one. There's a lot of headaches watching this team the last month, and that's not where you want to be heading into March. But there's opportunity, and there's still time left. That's the bright side of things. But yeah, tonight was, I think, rock bottom of where this team has been. The fact you go down 17 in this game, and really, other than Will Riley, who even he shot 6 of 16 from the floor, I still think he was great, though, 18.6 assists. Other than him, no one played well, and that can't happen on the road against an 11-11 team. I don't care how many top 5 picks they have. That team's not good. You're better. You need to play like you're better, and you're not going to be better than a lot of the teams left on your schedule, so you better start stepping up your game if you want any chance of beating them.
Yeah, there's a lot of season left still, but it has to happen soon, you know. Uh, that's pretty much it. I'm confused why Ben Hummerkaus's 3-point percentage has tanked when he's gone from the first option on an Evansville team to like the fourth or fifth option on Illinois. I just don't get why Kylan Boswell's not a shooter and can't finish layups. I don't know. It's just confusing because
There's
I did
nobody.
agree.
Yeah, real quick. Nobody on this team has improved their 3-point shooting from who they were a year ago, wherever they were. Like Ben Humrickhouse, worse
Yeah,
3-point shooter than he was at Evansville. Kylan Boswell, significantly worse 3-point shooter than he was at Arizona. Will Riley, now that one's a little more expected, but significantly worse 3-point shooter than he was in high school and AAU. Tomislav Ivicic, significantly worse 3-point shooter than he was overseas. I mean, even Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn's right around the same percentage he was as a freshman. I mean, nobody has improved from 3. Everybody's worse than they're capable of. It's insane.
yeah. I don't know. Just bad shooting luck, or yeah, I don't even know. So that pretty much sums up the season to this point. Is Illinois going to shoot well, or are they not? Wait and see when they walk on the court. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be right now. You were hoping to be in a position where you were starting to round into shape, and right now you are spiraling out of control and deteriorating, and that is not the spot you want to be heading into a stretch where you got UCLA, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Duke, Michigan, Purdue as 7 of your last 9 games this year, 6 of your last 8. I don't know if 6 of 8 now. Tonight was 9. But we'll be back sometime early next week. Let's hope that this team can figure things out and beat Minnesota. That all of a sudden becomes a very important game on the schedule on Saturday. You lose that one, the conversation becomes a little bit different, and you start to talk about what this team's tournament outlook truly is. Let's hope it doesn't get to that point. The one thing you can say about this team is that they have responded off losses fairly well over this stretch. It's just you've never gotten 2 good ones in a row. So hopefully they can bounce back on Saturday. We'll be back afterwards early next week to talk about it. Until then, give us a follow at Champagne on Ice on Twitter. Subscribe to the Field of 68 Podcast Network YouTube channel. Find us wherever else you get your podcasts as well. And hope everybody has a better weekend than the Illini had on the floor tonight. And we will talk to you next time right here on the